on the show today the brilliant Daniel McAdams, executive director of the Ron Paul Institute, and he is live almost every day with the great Ron Paul breaking down the world events on the Liberty Report. Dan, welcome back to the show. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Kyle. Thanks for having me back.
Excited for you to be back. Got a lot I want to get your thoughts on. So much is happening in the world of foreign policy. Will Trump's BB-Sitting policy work? Is Trump approving ties with Russia, and war in Venezuela? Is that on the horizon? So, of course, Dan, want to start off with, we got this Gaza deal in place. It's supposed to be a ceasefire. There's a lot of framework around it. Of course, Israel just violated the ceasefire last night, killed 46 children in a single night. And, Trump seems to really want this deal to work. And so I guess my first question to you, I want to center it around the ceasefire. Where do you think we are kind of with the status of the ceasefire? And does Trump have any chance of getting Netanyahu to abide by it?
I mean, ironically, this is one of the few areas where Trump's ego is actually a benefit, is a boost. Because he staked a lot of himself on this. He staked a lot of himself on being able to guarantee the ceasefire, and I'm sure he hears a lot of the opposition to his claims, his bold claims about stopping. I don't know, what is it, 85 wars to this point. He's reconciled Cain with Abel, I think, as well. But anyway, I think his ego may actually be one reason why this might do better than others. But let's not forget, Kyle, this is only the very first stage in a long process. That we've been here before. We've seen the movie before. They had the ceasefire before at the very early part of Trump's presidency, but they never got to stage two, because when they tried to go to stage two, Israel said, no, we don't want to go to stage two. We want to start bombing again. So that's what happened. And as you point out in your intro, that's what happened yesterday when allegedly someone took a pot shot at an IDF soldier in Gaza, and they went hog wild and killed, as you say, over 146 kids. Hamas said, we didn't even do it. We don't even know what's going on, which, believe them or not, who knows? But there's a lot of guns around there. There's a lot of militias around there. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. Who knows what the truth is? But I actually feel there's a little bit better of a chance of at least a few more days, maybe weeks of peace before they start at it again.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we see something similar to what we saw in January, which was 10 weeks about of a ceasefire before it. I mean, they cut the aid before that, and they're only allowing I think 15% of the aid that they agreed to allow into Gaza. Now, I read in Haaretz that Trump is engaging in this policy of BB-Sitting, where he's sending a string of high-level officials, Marco Rubio, Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff. I think Dan Crane, the chairman of CENTCOM, is there now. And this policy is supposed to, I guess, having a high-level American official there is supposed to keep Israel from acting out, making sure somebody is close enough to Netanyahu that if he informs the U.S. that they're going to do something, they have somebody there to stop them. What do you make of this policy where we have to have a literal babysitter in a country that we send at the very least $4 billion to every year to make sure they don't do something that our president explicitly doesn't want?
Yeah, there's an easy and cheaper way to say, we're going to cut off the money, no more bombs. And look, I don't know if I can say this. They did a big FU to Vice President Vance. He's over there in Israel. The Knesset passes this resolution saying, yeah, we're gonna annex all of the West Bank. Too bad. It was really an insult. And Vance, to his credit, he came out and said this was an insult. And they were chastened to a degree, which is something you don't see very often. But you're right, there are cheaper ways of doing this. But Trump hasn't really shown the appetite to do that at all yet.
Yeah. So, Dan, part of the whole giant deal that Trump has is supposed to bring peace to the Middle East includes eventually there being some sort of Palestinian state, but a very explicit term of Trump's 20-point peace plan is Israel not annexing the West Bank. Now, J.D. Vance was in Israel. The Israeli Knesset passed I think the first reading of a bill that would annex the West Bank. And then Trump had these remarks about Israel annexing the West Bank.
Could you say that louder, please?
Yes, yesterday there was a vote at the Knesset in Israel on annexing the West Bank. Do you see it as a challenge to your peace efforts?
Will you answer that, please? Because I cannot understand the words you're saying. Where are you? Where are you from? Where are you from? You're from France. Beautiful accent, but we can't understand what you're saying. The West Bank is. Don't worry about the West Bank. Israel's not going to do anything with the West Bank. Okay? Don't worry about it. Is that your question? They're not going to do anything with the West Bank. Don't worry about it.
So, Dan, should we trust Donald Trump? Is Israel not going to do anything with the West Bank?
Well, it's already de facto annexed. If you look at the map, these are the settlers have taken over a very, very large portion of the West Bank. So there's really nowhere it can go. There's no government in Israel that's going to expel the settlers, and they just expand the settlements. So a de jure, seizing of the West Bank is sort of beside the point in a way. It is already taken over, and there's violence every single day. I mean, you have to spend maybe 3.5 seconds going on X where you'll find a video of some crazed looking settler beating the hell out of some old woman trying to pick olives off of her tree. I mean, it happens every single day. So it's the situation is intractable, but the fact that Trump says that, again, his ego is now invested in Netanyahu not announcing annexation of the West Bank. So, we're desperate for good news. So I guess that's a little bit of a good thing.
That is a good point. My concern when it comes to the West Bank, of course, is around Mike Huckabee, who's should be acting as kind of Trump's eyes and ears in Israel. And from everything I could tell publicly, this man actually loves Israel more than his own country. I mean, he's singing songs about how great Israel is, no matter how bad they are. But also, he's kind of given Israel a green light on annexing the West Bank, even in full stop. And he refuses to use the term West Bank. He uses the term Judea and Samaria. And so, Dan, I always find it so strange how there's these, people who are looked at as hardcore Republicans from middle America, die-hard Christians, who then go out and, I guess, because of their Christian beliefs, think that they actually have to support Israel more than the United States of America. I mean, I've heard this from one of your senators, Ted Cruz. And so what do you make of this kind of line of thought in the Republican Party?
Well, in my opinion, and it's my opinion, and it's held by a lot of other people, they're not Christians. They're part of a cult that follows a Bible that was created about 100 years ago that completely goes against the Christian Bible. It completely destroys the New Testament. It destroys Jesus' message. So I would say they're not Christians at all. They're a member of a cult that has bastardized this Christianity. But I'm not a theologian. I'm not here to talk. I'm not here to preach. But the second worst thing he did, I'm here in Texas, man. When he went on stage and destroyed the Leonard Skinner song, I was just so mad. I was steam coming out of my ears. Don't do that. Don't do that. But no, he's an evil person. He's more concerned about the fact that Tucker Carlson called him out as well for being a non-Christian. Christian Zionism is not Christianity, and that flipped him out. Look, his side is losing. He and Pastor Hagee and all these old boomers who cashed in on mega bucks preaching a fake religion, their walls are crumbling around them, and they know it and they see it. Are they smart enough to do anything about it? No, I think they're just going to double down. But Huckabee is a disgusting person. He really is an awful, disgusting person. I hope he repents.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more on that. Now, one last really interesting story that came out of Israeli media this week, Dan. I originally saw the report on Khan News, and I wrote it up at the Libertarian Institute. And this is just another piece of evidence that adds to the pile of evidence that for years and years and years, Netanyahu propped up Hamas in Gaza by actually, as the Khan News reported, this is Israeli media points out, begged the Qataris allow money to continue to flow to Qatar, even though they knew it would end up in the hands of Hamas. And as so many people have brilliantly explained in the past, this is all about the policy of propping up Hamas so Netanyahu could say, we don't have a partner to peace. But here in the United States, every single day, Dan, we're told that the reason Israel could do what they're doing to Gaza is because they voted for Hamas. So do you see, any justification for this war that Israel is waging against the people of Gaza if their own government is at least very much responsible for Hamas controlling Gaza?
Well, since 1948, Israel has had one goal, which is to kick all the Palestinians out of the territory that they claim. And they claim a big chunk of the region, by the way. But at least right now, in what is Israel, their goal has always been to kick them out. They did it in the Nakba by the hundreds of thousands. And they're doing it to this day. And they'll do anything they can to justify it because they have sort of a strange end times view as well. And so they want to see them all gone. And so that's why they prop up Hamas, because they don't want a multi-confessional party, which is what Fatah was in the beginning. It had Christians in it, as well as Muslims. They couldn't have that. They don't want a negotiator because without a negotiator, they don't have to negotiate. And look what happened when they were trying to negotiate. Israel tried to bomb Qatar and kill all of the negotiators like they tried to do with Iran. They don't want negotiators. They only speak through the use of force and violence and murder and slaughtering kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to move on and ask you about the U.S. Russian relationship. I think going into the Trump administration, everybody should have known that Trump's claim to fame was that he was the most pro-Israeli president in U.S. history. However, there was a lot of optimism when it came to the war in Ukraine, came to dealing with Russia. And so Russia carried out a test of their new cruise missile. They say it has unlimited range, could deliver a nuclear warhead anywhere in the world. And this was Donald Trump's response.
Russia said this week that they've tested a new missile that can go more than 8,000 miles. Is that saber rattling for you? What is that?
They know we have a nuclear submarine, the greatest in the world, right off their shores. So, I mean, it doesn't have to go 8,000 miles. And they're not playing games with us. We're not playing games with them either. We test missiles all the time, but, we do have a submarine, a nuclear submarine. We don't need to go 8,000 miles. And I don't think it's an appropriate thing for Putin to be saying either, by the way. You ought to get the war ended. A war that should have taken 1 week is now in its soon 4th year. That's what you ought to do instead of testing missiles.
So, Dan, what do you make of Trump's kind of the way he's trying to handle Russia in this kind of brinksmanship and saber rattling?
Well, the first thing that struck me when I heard that the other day was that he doesn't seem to have a grasp of what happened. And I wonder if no one had briefed him. He's notorious for not wanting his daily CIA briefing. In fact, if you remember, there was a press report a while ago that Tulsi Gabbard was trying to turn it into like a Fox News show so he would actually watch it. He doesn't watch these things, and I got the feeling they didn't understand the implications of both of these two news, the Poseidon and the other one is slipping his mind right at the moment, but that's the one that can stay aloft for days, weeks, maybe even months, maybe even longer. It's powered by a micro nuclear power plant that allows it to stay aloft and allows it to strike wherever it is needed. It's truly a game-changing weapon if it is everything that's been claimed. And the fact that he seemed to be confused about it or not understand the implications. He once again mentioned that we have quote-unquote nuclear subs off the coast of Russia, which he's confusing because I think he's talking about nuclear-powered subs rather than submarines equipped with nuclear weapons, nuclear missiles. The two are two very different things. And he seems to, again, be conflating the two of them and not understanding the basics. So then that would sort of undermine his other statement that he repeats at every opportunity, which is that they should have had this over in a week. Any country would have had it over in the week. The U.S. is the country that spent 20 years losing to Afghanistan. So, don't lecture other countries about how to do a war. And also it shows that he doesn't understand the nature of the war in Ukraine because he surrounded himself with sycophants who themselves willfully ignorant about the situation, even though Russia from the very beginning has been very open. We are fighting a war not for territory, but a war of attrition, because we want to attrit away the ability of Ukraine to make war on us. We've been there, we've done that, we've been through 2 Minsk agreements, we've been through the war in 14. Whenever we take a break, they rearm and come back at us. So we're not going to let it happen this time. We want to get rid of the Nazis. We want to get rid of their ability to make war on our doorstep. We want to get rid of their ability to have NATO membership and bring NATO to our doorstep, and we won't quit until we do that. The fact that Trump doesn't seem to understand that, frankly, is a little bit frightening to me. To have a president so incapable of understanding or seeing the world outside of your own sort of talking points is a dangerous thing.
Yeah, so I want to ask you about Trump's Ukraine war policy, because, for me, this seems really confused. Where he says he wants to end the war quickly. Obviously, he hasn't done that yet. He cut the direct military aid going from the U.S. to Ukraine. I think I read that the Europeans say they could fund the war to about 12 to 15 billion dollars every year, when Zelensky is saying he's needing 60 billion in weapons every year. So the math just doesn't add up that this war could be successful. At the same time, he's putting new sanctions on Russia. He's approving long-range drone strikes inside Ukraine using long-range Western missiles to hit targets inside of Russia. And so it seems to be this really strange thing where he's kind of backing away from it, but in some ways he's actually getting the U.S. more involved in this conflict. What was he thinking or trying to do or achieve?
Well, he's also doing what he always does, which is to listen to the last person he talked to and change his policy accordingly. I mean, he had the phone call with Vladimir Putin the day before he was to meet with Zelensky. They reiterated some of the things that they agreed upon in Alaska. Everything seemed to be fine. And then the next day he meets with Zelensky, has a phone call with the European losers, and changes his position completely and puts sanctions on Russia completely out of the blue, catching everyone off guard. And with that action, actually owning the war. It's not Biden's war anymore. It's Trump's war. With those sanctions, he's made it Trump's war. So the fact of the matter is Trump is flailing hopelessly. The Europeans have absolutely no idea what to do. They're on their 19th sanctions package. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. Obviously, a different outcome. They're so desperate that they've sanctioned toilets, right? No more toilets from us. Okay. And I think Putin made a joke about that as well. They'll soon need to import some toilets. But there you have it. They're desperate. They're looking for a wonder weapon. The Tomahawks, I'm not an expert in missiles, but they're slow. They're big. They can't maneuver. They can easily be shot down. But there's also the psychological impact of a U.S. Tomahawk missile being launched inside Russia. It has to be launched by American personnel, military personnel. Trump himself said that when he tried to explain why he didn't give Zelensky the Tomahawks. He said it takes at least 6 months to train people to do this. We would have to have Americans doing it. It's not a good look. We don't want to do it. So it's completely understood that these Tomahawks are not only a physical threat, but more of a psychological threat to the United States to do this. So what do they do now? Europe doesn't have the money. And there's no stomach in America to go back to the Biden-era funding of Ukraine. That would sink Trump's presidency. That would destroy MAGA, what's left of MAGA. So what are they going to do? The Europeans have no money. I was just reading in I think Zero Hedge or something the other day that Porsche's profits have dropped to zero. VW is laying off tons of people. The German economy, the powerhouse of Europe, is gone. It's a shambles. It looks like sadly, it looks like Jamaica after this horrible hurricane. There's nothing left. The Europeans have committed absolute suicide. And as my good friend Colonel McGregor has mentioned in a few podcasts this past couple of weeks, he feels like it's on the verge of a revolution, and that could be the case there. So where do they go now? Where do they go next? There is nowhere to go. And the thing is that all that Trump has been able to offer over and over again, because he has the same group of knuckleheads around him, is the ridiculous Kellogg plan. Okay, you have a ceasefire, and then we start talking later. And they won't even guarantee to to not arm Ukraine while the ceasefire is in place. Russia has said no 15 times, 20 times, however many times. They're not going to do this. No country in war accepts a ceasefire before their objectives are met unless you're stupid. And there's a lot of things you could say about Putin, but he's not stupid. So the U.S. is saying the same things. The U.S. has absolutely no idea how to get out of this. The way out of it was on day one for President Trump to say, I'm out of here. This is Biden's war. I'm done. We want to talk to Russia. We want to do business. Everyone would be making money today if that were the case.
Right. Well, I do want to ask you another question about the U.S. Russian relationship, because aside from the Ukraine issue, there's a lot going on. NATO members are talking about shooting down Russian fighter jets. I think they violated like the very top of Estonia's airspace over the Gulf of Finland, they claim, and now they want to shoot those down. There were a couple of Russian decoy drones that landed in Poland. But I think most importantly, Dan, is the New START treaty, of course, which is the last remaining arms control agreement between the U.S. and Russia. It's already been heavily eroded, but it expires in February, and that will be it for arms control between the U.S. and Russia. And so, is there any chance that we could maybe shelve the Ukraine issue and get some things done with Russia, or does Trump just not have the like kind of wherewithal to negotiate like that?
I don't think it can be done. There are glimpses of it before. You know, when Putin and Trump had talked in the past, Ukraine wasn't the center of the conversation. It was about how to improve relations between the two countries and reestablish business relations. I mean, we have the Russians are sending over as President Putin's envoy, the person in charge of their overseas investment, of their business, doing trade, doing business. That's who they have, rather than a diplomat, Kirill Dmitriev. So that shows where their focus is, and that's where it could be. But the problem is President Trump is like Michael Corleone in Godfather 3. Every time he wants to get out, they keep pulling him back in. You know, you've got Rubio, you've got Kellogg, you've got all these neocon slime that are around President Trump, sucking him back in because Ukraine is the only game in town for them. That's the only taking down Russia, taking out Russia. There's this crazed fever dream that they've had since 1991, when Russia emerged from the Soviet Union, and they're not about to let it go. They're a one-trick pony. That's it.
Unbelievable destruction of the U.S. empire on such a pointless and unnecessary cause like going after Russia. Dan, before we wrap up, there has been a lot going on in our own hemisphere. And, I'm just starting to see, today I saw op-eds in the New York Times, El País, a Spanish outlet, both condemning the U.S. strike. So it seems like this is getting a little bit more mainstream media attention, but so far, I think they've blown up 14 boats either in the Pacific or the Caribbean. I know, you spent some time on Capitol Hill in Dr. Ron Paul's office. Can you imagine the president being able to bomb a country that, look, isn't even in the region of on the other side of the world, that any country that Congress has even remotely authorized the president to use force against, just waging this bombing campaign with no congressional oversight, no briefings to Congress that included any additional info. This is according to Rand Paul. They haven't given them more evidence. So I guess, how unbelievable is what Trump is doing in Venezuela, Colombia? How is that?
Well, we've dumbed down the population. Nobody reads the Constitution. Nobody understands the Constitution. They think it represents weakness rather than strength. But restraint is strength. It's not a weakness. So you have that. That's how you start it. And you have a brilliant propaganda campaign. And I was talking about this today on the Liberty Report with Dr. Paul. Basically, what they're doing is rebranding the war on terror to being the global war on terror to the global war on narco terror. They literally are taking that and just repurposing it for this Western hemisphere. They're using the same things, the fentanyl as the WMDs. Yeah, and Americans are sick of drugs. They're sick of fentanyl in the streets. You see these zombies going around parts of, Philadelphia and all the major cities in the country. So everyone is already kind of pretty much on board. Those of us who recognize and have said that the drug war, which was launched in 1971 under President Nixon, has been an abject failure. Nobody wants to hear that. All they want to do in frustration is bomb something and kill some people. And that's what's happening. So people like Senator Paul, people like antiwar.com, Ron Paul Institute, when we say, hey, this is not, you can't just go killing people without proving that they're bad guys. We were against it when Obama was doing it. We're against it now. It's not a partisan issue. It's you guys are just weak. You don't understand what it takes to get the job done. And then if someone has the gall to say, well, wait till there's a new president in that wants to start bombing drug dealers in the middle of the United States, which could happen. They don't understand, but we've killed 57 people so far. One of them, I think, survived, and the U.S. didn't bring him in for trial. If the guy was a drug smuggler, why not bring him in? Put him on trial. No, we released him, I think, to Mexico and sent him back to wherever he was from. So it's an absolute disastrous situation. Senator Paul, I know, has teamed up with Tim Kaine to put together a war powers resolution that would remind the president that he does not have the authority to use force. It's a privilege resolution, which is something that was enshrined in the War Powers Act. As bad as that act was, it did a couple of good things. It allowed members and senators to bring forth a privilege resolution, which means that it has to get a hearing on the floor. It has to have a vote. So that's an important thing. But the thing is, Kyle, when Dr. Paul was doing these kinds of resolutions and I was working with him trying to build coalitions to do it, we had a pretty broad left and right coalition. We had conservatives on board, libertarians, we had progressives. And you look around the House and Senate right now, it's a pretty lonely place when it comes to this. Everyone is afraid of Trump because Trump's a bully. Even the people in his party, the only people that are not afraid of him are Thomas Massie and Senator Rand Paul. So yes, this is a terrible situation. The president has even talked about going in and starting a land war with Venezuela, and Congress is completely, they're hibernating for the winter or something. Nobody seems to care about this. And of course, that's because they're cowards. They don't want to be on the record because when things go south, and they will, just like the original War on Terror, this new Coke version of the War on Terror will go south as well. They don't want to be on the hook for having voted for it because they saw what happened to them after they voted for Iraq.
So, Dan, I got this clip of the Venezuelan interior minister talking about a recent capture of what they say were mercenaries linked to the CIA. So I want to play this and get your thoughts.
I was on my way here just a moment ago, and they informed me about 3 people they captured at another location with CIA manuals, and they have no shame. So they arrive and delete things from their phones because they think that by deleting their phone, everything disappears. But no, those phones talk. They talk. And what we've discovered is truly pure gold. The CIA is connected to those sectors that hate Venezuela. We live in peace and security in this country, so please just leave us alone. It is undoubtedly an act of aggression. These military exercises, which they are currently conducting together with Trinidad, are clear provocations. These actions have been denounced in the official statement that you are referring to.
So, Dan, I want to ask you this question because I think you have a really good and clear sense on the CIA and how regime change works, particularly in Latin America. So I wanted to ask you, do you think that Trump is going to attempt some kind of regime change operation in Venezuela? And if so, do you think it's going to come in like a CIA assassination coup style?
I think he already is, and it's obvious. I mean, the fact that he's issued a finding to the CIA permitting covert action inside Venezuela, he's admitted it, which is something that presidents don't usually do. The whole point is to have plausible deniability, but he just came and blurted it out. No, I've got him in there doing that, which ironically, if you think about it, it really gives carte blanche to Maduro to eliminate his political enemies. Because he has a lot of evidence. He could just say, these are agents of the Americanos, and we have to get rid of them. So they've actually given him a tool that he needs to get rid of any potential opposition. But will it be? I don't know that the CIA will be able to overthrow him. I think the key would be whether they're able to peel off enough military officers to stage a military coup. Now, that's what they did in 2002 against Hugo Chavez, and the U.S. was eyeballs deep in that coup. And they had him. They had whisked him off to an island. But but they hadn't peeled away enough military officers, and so a counter coup came and rescued Hugo Chavez from the military officers. We already saw a couple of I think it was today we saw a report from his personal pilot who had been recruited by a U.S. agent and offered unlimited sums of cash and a probably wonderful mansions in Miami or what have you, if he would just fly President Maduro to some place where he could be arrested. So they look. The thing is that they have unlimited money because they stole it from us, so they can keep launching these things over and over again if they want to. So, but from what I understand, the military is the most loyal part of society to Maduro. So, it will take some serious action to bribe enough military officers to overthrow him.
Yeah, and I recently watched Matt Blumenthal interview. I think his name is Juan Guidó. He was the man who tried to orchestrate the coup in Venezuela, known as the Bay of Piglets. What was that in 2019? And this is what he said his plan was: is that they had bribed some high level military officials, and they had believed that those military officials were going to flip, but those military officials were telling Maduro the whole time. They were handing them bags of cash, and they were probably, giving half of it to Maduro, and, laughing all the way like, this coup is never going to work. And so I don't see it happening. Now, while we're in South America, Dan, I want to let you take like a quick little tour of victory. You're a libertarian, I'm a libertarian, and there was a libertarian candidate in Argentina, Milei, who a lot of libertarians in the United States, some of my friends, very openly embraced. And from the instant he came on the scene, you and maybe you alone among libertarians were waving the red flag about this guy. Hey, do not celebrate him. This man is a tool of U.S. empire. He is not a libertarian. And so what made you look at a man who was literally taking a chainsaw to the tats code and say something's not right there?
Yeah, all the theatrics. It's kind of sad that libertarians are so desperate for a hero that they'll embrace anyone who mouths the words of that might be appealing to them. But the United States. I think a lot of the reason why the U.S. wants to overthrow Venezuela and why it's engaged in saber rattling in Brazil as well is because they're terrified of BRICS. They're terrified of a new pole emerging that will challenge U.S. hegemony. Financial. And ultimately maybe even military, but certainly financial hegemony. And so up comes Javier Milei, who the first thing you see is that he absolutely lines up his foreign policy with U.S. foreign policy. He rejects BRICS membership right off the bat when it comes to Israel, when it comes to Ukraine, when it comes to really everything that's important to the neocons in the U.S. He's right there. He's right in the center, and he's completely in line. So that is what they want with someone like Milei. And why not make him libertarian? The Beltway, the CIA, it's basically Hollywood anyway. So they just kind of put a new script in. Yeah, I got a good one. Let's make the guy libertarian. Oh, that's gonna be hilarious. They're gonna fall for it. You just watch. And when you have people that I truly respect, like the brilliant Hans Hermann Hoppe, saying that Milei is no libertarian, he is basically a huckster. Then it's time to sit up and pay attention as well on the economics front. Here's a guy who comes to the U.S. with his hands out, and President Trump says, "Hey, we're gonna do a currency swap for $20 billion, and we're gonna throw in another $20 billion as well. But listen up, Argentinian voters, you better vote for this guy's party. We're gonna pool that $40 billion." From you. He said that just a few days before or a week before the elections. Can you imagine if that had happened to the U.S.? If President Putin came over and offered Trump $40 billion, but only if America votes for Trump again, the Russiagate people, their heads would explode. It's blatant interfering in the elections, but the U.S. is desperate to not have the virus of BRICS spread throughout Latin America. And I don't know that they can reverse it. It's funny whenever you hear them talk about BRICS, even President Trump. BRICS, I don't know. What is that? That was something a while ago. I don't know. It's no one's talking about now. It's still a thing. It's still a thing. And it's still viewed as a threat by the U.S. because they know that our economy is a house of cards. We're in a bigger bubble than we were in '08. It's the AI bubble, and it's a house of cards. Look what happened today with the Fed. And he warned, the Fed chair warned, inflation is coming. I lowered the rate. Inflation is coming. It's a disaster. It's a real danger for the U.S. And so they're desperate at $38 trillion in debt to try to shore up this boat that's taking in water from all sides.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting, Dan, that this is one of the most blatant acts of election rigging that you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
The killings in the Caribbean and the Pacific are blatant acts of extrajudicial murder. And really, the left in the United States that has been in hysterics about Trump being an authoritarian, Trump being a dictator, Trump murdering people, looking for any charge whatsoever to bring Trump up on, have completely ignored it. And really, the only meaningful criticism of Trump's foreign policy right now, and we have friends on the left like the Matt Blumenthal types, but I'm talking about the general mainstream, kind of thought. It's like Tucker Carlson, it's you and Ron Paul, Rand Paul, most outspoken member of the Senate on the Venezuelan strikes. He's a Republican. Thomas Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, again, people who you was kind of linked most firmly with the kind of conservative base, at least, if not the Republican Party, are the only ones willing to criticize Trump. Why do you think that all the Democrats aren't like going to war and trying to impeach Donald Trump over this? It seems like they're literally letting him get away with murder when they were trying to get him on charges related to him not correctly valuing his property. It seems absolutely absurd.
Well, they have this. They have an unfair reputation of being the anti-war party. They're the pro-war party. They just want war against your wallets. They want war against other countries. They want war against your churches. It's a party that doesn't stand for anything at all anymore except power. In that respect, it's just like the Republican Party. Power means everything, and that's the only thing they care about. You're right. I mean, they have actually something that they would have. They could be building a case right now for the midterms if they happen to be successful in the House or the Senate, and the Senate. You could really start building the case for a real impeachment. I mean, it is an impeachable offense to do what he's doing. And I'm speaking as someone, I don't vote, but I supported Trump. I was happy that he won because I didn't want Kamala Harris to win. I thought he would be better. I knew he was probably lying on a lot of stuff, but I thought he might be better on some stuff. So I'm not a never Trumper. I'm not a Trump arrangement syndrome guy at all. I'm an issues guy. And the fact that he's killing people. I mean, I remember reading, I haven't done it in a while, but reading the State Department human rights reports that they would come up with yearly. They had to put together a report to gauge different countries on whether they're free or whether they're unfree. And one of the big criteria was, does the government engage in extrajudicial killings? And that was a big red flag. If they do that, well, that signifies that they're not free. And they would, Cuba, Belarus, Iran, all the bad guys, quote unquote. Well, they did extrajudicial killings. That's why they're bad guys. And here we are doing it and celebrating it. And very few are speaking out. As you say, the only voices we're hearing are coming from the right, which is probably some of the most encouraging good news that we've seen in a long time. The right wing is going to become anti-war again. Sign me up. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Dan. And thank you for coming back on my show today. I always appreciate it when you take the time to come and share your thoughts and insights with my audience, because you have such an amazing perspective, not only because you have deep understanding of this stuff yourself, but you are fortunate enough to get to sit next to one of the greatest Americans ever, Ron Paul, almost every single day and break this stuff down. So Dan, again, thank you for your time. Everybody, read what is published at the Ron Paul Institute. Really, really great articles there. Not just Ron's weekly column, but Dan has content and they publish from other people like former Representative John Duncan Jr. has written a lot of great stuff for you guys that we often rerun at antiwar.com. We're reprinting one Dan's articles tomorrow at antiwar.com. So you can read it now at the Ron Paul Institute, or you check out tomorrow morning. It'll be the top viewpoint at antiwar.com. And Dan, hopefully we could do this again soon.
Sounds great, Kyle. Thanks for having me on again. Look forward to meeting again.
Absolutely.